o'clock, and I am here to talk to you about what to substitute since we're all here in the staying home mode. I've heard lots of my friends tell me, what do I do when I don't have this ingredient, but I want to make that? Or I can't go to the store right now. What can I use? This is what I have. Let's just dive in. We're not really cooking right now. I'm just going to be telling you a million different substitutions. So let's start with taco seasoning. Now this may look like a lot of spices, but they are some of the most common spices. And you do not have to buy expensive spices. You can get a lot of spices at Aldi and Dollar General and the Dollar Tree. So one of the reasons I like taco seasoning is you can see I don't even have a taco seasoning packet because I don't use them. Grayson doesn't love the cumin flavor, and that's probably the second ingredient on most packets. So when I make my own, I usually use a little bit less. So let me tell you what is in taco seasoning other than the stuff that you don't want in there. Preservatives for color and flavor. Number one ingredient is chili powder. Lots of different chili powders. Yes, this may say organic, but you know what? I got it on sale with a coupon. So you do not have to buy fancy spices. The next ingredient is cumin, ground cumin, and oregano. So if you're wanting to make enough for a packet, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, half a teaspoon of cumin, more or less as you like it, half a teaspoon of oregano, 1/4 of a teaspoon of each garlic and onion powder. Now if you want to chop up onions and put it in there with the meat as it's cooking, you can omit one of those. You can also, if you have onion flakes, you can use that. Now on the taco seasoning packet, there's a little bit of thickener in there. So you may not have known that, but that's that particular texture you get. If you like that texture, then add just like a half a teaspoon of cornstarch, and that'll help give you that texture. If you don't, leave it out. So that's taco seasoning, and just mix that into your ground beef at the end. So the next thing, one of the most common, everybody seems to be baking right now. Lots of people have been telling me that they are doing a lot of baking. So self-rising flour. If you don't have it, you don't have to run to the store, and you can go ahead and make that recipe that calls for self-rising flour. One of the recipes that I have on the blog for self-rising flour, go to gritsandgouda.com. If you type in self-rising flour, that's going to pop up, that recipe. How you make your own self-rising flour is 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, not baking soda, okay? Baking powder, not to go into a science lesson here, but baking powder has baking soda and cream of tartar in it, okay? It already has it in it. So all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a little bit of salt. 1/4 to half a teaspoon, I've seen all variations. And that is self-rising flour. Let's say you're really healthy and you have lots of whole wheat flour. You can do half and half. Half, if you're running low on your whole wheat, you can do half whole wheat and half all-purpose. And that's how you make self-rising flour. We are rocking along here. So yeast. Someone messaged me today asking me about yeast. I think they were having trouble getting it to activate. So first of all, there's 2 different kinds. Lots of people are making yeast bread right now. There's fast acting or fast rising, and then there's just active dry. There is a difference. It's still yeast, it's still dry yeast, but if you have the fast acting, that means the granules are bigger, so they dissolve quicker, and it can be stirred into flour. The active dry is smaller, so it has to be dissolved. But a quick tip, if you want to see if your yeast, because you might have had that in your cabinet for a long time, right? Not used it until quarantine time. Check the date on the back. There is an expiration date. And if for some reason you don't have an expiration date, put it in the warm water that it calls for. It's usually 105-ish to 10-ish degrees. Then sprinkle just a half a teaspoon of sugar. You're feeding the yeast. If it does not act up at all, if it doesn't rise in 10 minutes, your yeast is probably not going to be good. So that is just a tip to check before you put it in your bread and you spend all that time. All right, so still in the baking area of my handy chart here, brown sugar. Let's say you only have granulated sugar. You're out of brown sugar. So what is brown sugar? It is as simple as granulated sugar with molasses. That's all it is. Light brown sugar is 1 tablespoon of molasses per cup of granulated sugar, and dark brown sugar, which is my favorite, is 2 tablespoons per cup. So you can make your own if you have molasses. Pretty sure I got that at the Dollar Tree. So if you don't have molasses, it's easy to come by. All right, so that is the last little tip on baking would be if you don't have garlic powder, which is usually the other way around. Usually people don't have garlic cloves. Let's say you don't have a garlic clove. You can simply use 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. I do it all the time when I don't have fresh garlic. So you can go ahead and make that recipe that calls for fresh garlic. Of course, the fresh is better. All right, so we're done with the baking. Now, let's see, this category is fats. Not my favorite category, but in baking, it is great. Let's say you have run out of butter, my favorite. Run out of it or don't have it. Let me tell you what not to use. This is whipped. Basically, it's whipped vegetable oil with coloring in it. If you guys follow me on my blog, you saw the interesting story that I posted out there that my mom gave me about oleomargarine back in World War II. So that is not what I want to bake with. But I'm not ashamed to say I do use this to put on my bread to make garlic toast because it spreads easily. But for baking, I absolutely use butter. Depending on what you want, on my cookie recipe that I just put out, 3 different cookies, I talked to you about shortening versus butter, and one of my cookies has half and half. I want the shortening to raise up and make the cookies light and fluffy, but I want the butter because I love the flavor. Speaking of baking, coconut oil, refined coconut oil is actually a really good substitution because it has a firm texture, but you can also sear chicken with it. So it goes either way. It has a higher smoke point, like oil, vegetable oil, canola oil. I know they're not the healthiest, but olive oil. You can substitute that. Let's say cooking spray. You don't have you ran out of cooking spray. You can order one of these, or you can, the next time you make your once-a-week trip, you can get one of these and it sprays vegetable oil or olive oil. You can use extra virgin olive oil for cooking, but when it comes to baking, technically you can, but just remember, extra virgin olive oil lends it that flavor. There actually is olive oil cake out there. Just know that going in, but regular olive oil doesn't have as much of that flavor. Guess what this is? If you are over 55, you may know what this is. It is a bacon drippings pot. and I love it. This fat, if you're out of any of the oils or butter, it is great to fry eggs, to fry or sear pork chops, chicken. It has a higher smoke point and it lends that great bacon flavor. So those are the fats and oils. Also in this chart, I'll tell you a few more substitutions about if you don't have something, what you can use. Let me spin this around. I have something in the fridge. Here we're going to talk about milk and whipping cream and what to do when you don't have one of those. Last night on my Zoom Bible study, one of the girls said she didn't have whipping cream and what to do. She was making scones. So one of the suggestions I gave her was to use melted butter. So it gives you the liquid fat needed. You need that liquid for the flour, but then the butter has mostly fat in it. Another thing would be to use half whole milk and half melted butter. And if you go down on the milk fat scale, if you have 1%, then you'll need to up the butter. Does that make sense? So another thing, let's say you don't have half and half and you're making a recipe or you need it for your coffee. So just think about the fat content. Whipping cream is all the way up to 36% fat, as opposed to this is 2% milk. So when you split the difference in these two, you are making whole milk. But when you split the difference, let's say whipping cream and half go together, and you'll get light cream if this is heavy. Half and 2% will give you whole milk. Does that make sense? So you use the highest fat you have and the lowest, and you'll be making something in the middle. Let's say buttermilk. You know, all Southerners like buttermilk. You can make that so easily with any, not the whipping cream, but any of these milks, whole milk, 2%, 1%. For every 1 cup of milk, you add 1 tablespoon of vinegar or lemon juice. I was raised on apple cider vinegar, so I always have that in the cupboard. A tablespoon of that to a cup of the milk. Let it stand 5 minutes, and you have created buttermilk. I never say never, but I don't buy buttermilk because I always make it. I don't use it a ton on a regular basis, so I just add that to the milk and make my own. All right. Other milks would be, a lot of people keep the evaporated milk on hand, and let's say you're out of whole milk, half a cup of evaporated, half a cup of water, brings it, kind of rehydrates it and gives you the whole milk. Great to bake with. Sweetened condensed milk, it is not the same. It is, like it says, condensed, and boy, is it loaded with sugar. So just keep that in mind. You know, I love it, but it's not a good substitute for whole milk. All right, so that is the milks and fats substitutions. We just have one more to go, and it's kind of a miscellaneous one. Let's see. Let's say you are having Taco Tuesday and you've made your taco seasoning from the spices you have, and let's say you don't have any refried beans. I love refried beans. Put it on the flour tortilla, spread it all around, and then I put the taco shell, break it into, and then I put my ingredients, and kind of like a Taco Bell gordito, I think. Let's say you don't have any refried beans. You can make your own, y'all. Dried beans are inexpensive. All kind of dried beans. And if you have an Instant Pot, 8 cups of water, a pound of beans, 30 minutes in the Instant Pot. You've made your own, and you can save it for other things. All right, so refried beans. Let's go to the tomato route. Let's say, speaking of Taco Tuesday, maybe you're making enchilada casserole and you don't have the Rotel. Now this is not Rotel brand, but let's say you don't have that. All you have to do is have a can of, these are regular dice, but you can buy the petite to make it more like that. And then a jalapeno pepper, or a can of tomatoes, and a small can of green chilies. And you've made your own Rotel. All right. Tomato paste. It's used in lots of soups to thicken things and add flavor. If you have these sun-dried tomatoes, just reconstitute them in a little bit of hot water and puree them. You've got tomato paste, tomato sauce. Drain these tomatoes and puree them in the blender. You've made your own tomato sauce. Let's say you're making spaghetti and you don't have any more spaghetti, which you should have lots of different shapes of pasta. Use that. Don't feel like you have to use spaghetti. You can also use egg noodles. Okay, and if you don't have pasta and you don't have egg noodles and you don't have rice, bless your heart, your cupboard is bare. You can use quinoa. You may have, of course, if you don't have rice, you may not have quinoa in your cabinet, but these are all substitutes that you can put things on. Parboiled rice is my favorite. That's for another video, but it really keeps the rice from sticking together. Lastly, breakfast. Let's talk breakfast. I eat oatmeal almost every day. And let's say you don't have any more of these nice little convenient packets. You're out. What do? Now this may be a no-brainer, but it may be an aha moment. You may have quick cooking oats in the back of your cabinet to make oatmeal cookies. It's the same exact thing as one of these. 1/3 cup of quick cooking oats is exactly, because I measured it out, exactly the same as this. So 1/3 cup oats, 1/3 cup of milk or water. Then this is where the fun comes in. You can do all the add-ins. Clean out your pantry and find out what you can add to your oatmeal. Dried cranberries. Do you have powdered peanut butter? That is a good shelf staple. If you don't, I know you have peanut butter, because 94% of Americans have peanut butter in the cabinet. Raisins, add that in. Cinnamon and raisins, make your own. Dried figs, apricots. And then my other favorite is apple cinnamon oatmeal. Just chop up an apple. The bags of apples are cheap and they last in the fridge forever. Y'all, that is it. Go and follow me at gritsanddakoota.com.